The phrase game changer is overused in motoring, but this small German hatchback ushered in a new and exciting class of car that would bring performance driving to the masses. The hot hatch. (1977), the age of the hardman handlebar moustache, and the first of the VW Golf GTIs landed on British shores. You had sports car performance in a compact, lightweight family hatchback. This was revolutionary stuff back in '77. Now I can almost hear the keyboard warriors out there getting ready to hit the caps lock button and send me an angry email saying that the GTI was not the first hot hatch. And of course that's true, there were others. But this was the first to really capture the public's imagination, and driving it around now, some 40 years later, you can feel the handling and the charisma that really inspired the generations of hot hatches that would come next. The 1.6 litre four-cylinder fuel-injected engine inside the GTI propels this little car to 60 miles an hour in 9 seconds, which is a full 5 seconds faster than the MG BGT, a so-called sports car of the day. And if you've got a bit of a heavy right foot like mine, you do occasionally lose a little bit of control of the steering when you accelerate hard. The Mark I Golf GTI is a pure gem, and history shows us just how important this car was for people who love their driving. But like all runaway successes, what it did was galvanise their opponents. And by 1984, Ford, Renault, Peugeot and Vauxhall had all joined in on the hot hatch party, and VW had to react. The Golf GTI Mark II picked up where the Mark I left off. New chassis structure, new engine, but the same gobsmacked grin on your face when you're driving it. Now this is the GTI that I remember from my childhood, when the Freddie Mercury moustache was all the rage. It was the kind of car driven by girls who were too attractive to talk to you at the disco, or guys who looked like they should have been the milk tray man. By that time, hot hatches were everywhere, and manufacturers were engaged in this heavy-duty Cold War struggle to be crowned king of the hot hatches. The Mark II was still a thoroughly organic car to drive. It really followed in the footsteps of the Mark I. No ABS, no traction control. It got a power upgrade in 1986, as well as a 16-valve engine, and that brought the 0 to 60 time down to a magical 8 seconds. Over 88,000 Mark II Golf GTIs were sold in the UK alone by 1992, almost 3 times as many as the Mark I. And the problem that VW had was, how do you possibly top that? The Mark III was bigger, and it did have improved aerodynamics, but the 80s hot hatch party was over. Despite getting a power upgrade over the Mark II, the Mark III was 400 kilograms heavier and a lot bigger, and weighed down by all the safety features and creature comforts that we've all come to expect as standard. And it actually increased the 0 to 60 time to well over 8 seconds. It was a bit like a heavyweight boxer being dragged out of retirement despite having a few extra stone and not enough punch. Don't get me wrong, this is still a great car. It's just a bit too sensible. The tricky third album of the Mark III was superseded in 1998 by the Mark IV. Not a massive leap forward in the looks department, but there were some interesting developments. Al Pacino and George Michael had brought the goatee beard into fashion, as were performance diesels. And the Mark IV Golf was the first to bring a diesel option into the GTI, much to the shock and horror of many hot hatch enthusiasts. But towards the end of the Mark IV's lifespan in 2002, VW decided to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Golf with the fastest accelerating GTI ever, taking less than 8 seconds to accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour. It went down a storm with the public, and the GTI was firmly back in business. The Mark V was a massive leap forward in looks, and it was also more GTI focused. Performance was back. The Mark V GTI was the most powerful ever, with a 0 to 60 of just 6.8 seconds. That's faster than a Ferrari Dino, and a whopping top speed of 150 miles per hour. It's the chassis advances that really stand out in this car, with the McPherson struts at the front and multi-link rear suspension. The car feels more sports car-like than ever. And really, that suspension is making the most out of the tyre grip that advanced considerably through the 2000s. Much more grip in the tyre, stiffer suspension to shore the car up, to take the G-forces that were much, much higher. Compared to the Mark III and the Mark IV, this was a massive leap forward in terms of power and handling. The Mark VI came along in 2009 and was another step up in aerodynamics and power. But as of today, some 40 years after the first Mark I rolled into the UK, there is a new GTI. The Mark VII. So, it's 2016, the age of the long sleeve tattoo and the Mark VII Golf GTI. Both are a statement of intent, and this car's performance is really off the chart with a 0 to 60 of 6.5 seconds. Faster than a Lamborghini Countach and a top speed of 152 miles per hour. The power to weight ratio of the Mark VII is actually the closest to the Mark I of the entire GTI range. Weighing 1,400 kilograms, it has 220 brake horsepower, the Mark I's 110. Although the Mark VII hasn't shed much weight over its predecessors, the fact is the weight is lower in the car, the ride height is lower, so it's much more dynamic through the corners. You've got a lot more stability, you can corner like you're on rails. It's packed with technology. To be honest, I think there's enough tech on board this thing to get you to Mars and back. And it's basically an interstellar rocket ship. So there you have it. That's the story so far of the world's longest running hot hatch. It's had its ups and downs over the years, but with the Mark VII, it feels like it's come full circle. A feisty front-wheel drive weapon that still puts a massive smile on your face. Hang on, isn't that the... whatever.
The car will start to overheat quite quickly. And what has happened in the snow, for instance, is that sometimes you hit the snowbank, this gets full covered with the snow, then the engine will start to overheat, and there is always risk that you damage the engine if you run